just a second. And yeah, so Sarah had the great idea to talk about COVES goals or New Year's resolutions now that it's 2020. I hope a lot of you received our extremely dorky holiday card. Also, that I think had a 2020 vision joke. I hope that was maybe the first 2020 vision joke you heard in the new year, but they're just going to keep coming. And I just thought of this, but apropos of the group that we have here, I wanted to share before we get into COVES things that I was doing a great crossword puzzle recently that had a lot of resolution puns. So the one that just came to mind, I'm sure none of our COVES resolutions will be like this, but was a nun's New Year's resolution is to give up old habits. There were a lot. I'll send them all to you all later because that's the most important use of my time today. So we wanted to share both some COVES project kind of goals and things that we're working on in 2020 and get some input from you all on ideas you have or thoughts about any of them. So we've got like 5 of those. And then we'll kind of jump to folks here to see what are you really trying to kind of kick off now in this new year. Maybe there's new like little pieces of data that you haven't been able to attend to that you're like, I'm finally going to do that analysis. Maybe you're switching to a new data collection strategy and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. Does anyone have any advice? Anything that you are thinking of or wanting to share with the group, nothing is too small really. So I'm going to start, I'm just going to paste 5 little topics into the chat. I was going to make the world's most boring PowerPoint slide, but I wanted to be able to see everyone's faces. The 5 things that Ryan, Sarah, Gabby, and I talked about that we wanted to share with you are here in the chat right now. So number 1, COVES, the project in 2020, we want to recruit more institutions. Number 2 is on the questions and measures side, we're going to be doing some improvement of the core instrument. We're going to be strengthening, number 3, community and conversations. Number 4, building up our evaluation capacity, building resources, more tools for data conversations and rollouts. And then the number 5 disappeared. That's a separate goal, but thinking about translation and reaching more non-English speaking visitors. So just to start out sharing about continued recruitment, that's a big goal for us through COVES. We have, I think the number that Ryan just said was like 34 institutions. I think we have 30 officially participating right now, but then in terms of in the pipeline, is that right, Ryan?
I think with January, we're at 32.
32. Okay.
I'm going to say 32.
32, which when you think about where we started with 7 or 8 is great. It's incredible. But we still want even more folks to participate for a lot of reasons. And so one of those would be kind of the thing we always say about representation of the field, whether the field is defined as science centers or museums more broadly, which we'll get into a little bit more. But even when it was science centers only, the more science centers you have participating, the better you're able to represent a field. So our aggregate data gets better if we can say that we're representing, more institutions participating and collecting data for us. Improves our ECB efforts because we can, we have a lot of large institutions with a lot of capacity, but that capacity can be used even better to help more smaller institutions. And, it kind of gives us more power for comparisons, like subgroup comparisons specifically. Thinking about some of the stuff we got into on the aggregate report this year, like children's focused museums versus, broad audience museums or regional comparisons. Right now, even with a group of, that seems huge to me based on where we started, of 32 museums, you still sometimes end up with these subgroup comparisons that are just not quite big enough to really be meaningful. So we really only have like one major museum in like Boston, right? And so if we wanted a regional comparison in this area, we want to grow up a little more. And so that would strengthen our collaboration much better. And that also includes broadening to beyond science centers. So something we've talked about a little bit here and there. But for those of you who don't know, we wanted to share that we have actually at least two, I think more, art museum colleagues on the call with us today because COVES is bringing in art museums. So Julie Goss and I believe Rachel Wolf is here as well, but I think is eating lunch. And Julie is, are you the only one here from Crystal Bridges, or is, no, there's someone else?
Caitlin Casey is
Caitlin Casey
joining me, and she works here at Crystal Bridges with me.
Hi, Caitlin. Yes, C. Casey, I see you now. So we're really excited about bringing on art museums and the great perspective that they will bring to COVES. And Ryan is also going to be attending the Association for Children's Museums conference in May. We have had some efforts to reach out to children's museums in the past, but we're just trying to strengthen that even more. We have a lot of folks here through Aztec who actually also consider themselves to be children's museums, and so we'd like to build that group up. So we've got a session at ACM, bringing on more children's museums, and along with the art efforts, we actually put in an IMLS grant, another one, continuing our IMLS grant tradition to hold like a convening for art museums to be held in Minneapolis at MIA, the Minneapolis Institute of Art, to talk about COVES and art, which would bring in even more art museums and kind of repeat that process. So that's also one of the ways we're trying to grow. But I would not forget to mention that growth can happen through all of you as well. If you, and I know this has happened before, that you've got a museum that you partner with on another project, or a museum in your region or your city, and you think, God, it would be great if we had their data to compare to, or if I think they would get a lot out of this project. We've been connected to new museums through current participants all the time. So if you can think of another institution like that, that is absolutely something you should do and help connect us with. And kind of on that note, our Canadian Science Center friends have been very active in doing that. So Andrea Durham, is always saying, we want more Canadian science centers. We want more Canadian science centers. So we're to that end as well, Ryan, in the conference month of May, will likely also be going to the CASC conference, the Canadian Association of Science Centers, Ryan, where is that conference? Ottawa. So in Ottawa, to go and talk to more Canadian science centers to join up with COVES. So that's yet another recruitment initiative we're undertaking right now. Did I miss anything on recruitment? No? Do any of you have thoughts about that? I mean, maybe it's pretty straightforward, but anything, thoughts to share with us about any of our strategies or questions? If not, Ryan, do you want to talk about our questions and measures?
I would love to talk about our questions and measures. And just about that recruitment thing, I'm curious if when you think about COVES, since there are so many people on this call, do you typically think about it? I mean, the phrasing of this question is all wrong, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Do you think about it from like your individual institutional perspective, or do you often think about the others involved because of the data that you're able to compare to, or because of other institutions you may partner with who do visitor experience study type work? Is it all internally focused, or are you thinking about this collaborative effort and saying, oh yeah, that other museum that I work with all the time should also do COVES? Andre, you're not allowed to answer. I see you're getting ready to answer, and you're gonna just.
Right.
You're gonna.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for us, selfishly, we would like Canadian comparisons. North American comparisons are awesome, but across Canada would be even more awesome. And so I think that it's hard to separate that from our internal use, because part of our internal use is the benchmarking aspect that I think is really, really helpful to our use of the data. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, if that's helpful.
It's definitely what I'm looking for. And I would argue, I mean, Julie and Rachel don't need to speak up right now. They've only been involved for a couple weeks or a couple months, depending on how you think about it. But in reality, that's going to be really important as we think about the other organizational types that get involved because of those comparisons. And in case some of you on the webinar haven't seen the COP or the email that I think Jessica from Science World sent out, she did some really interesting analyses using Science World's data and the COVES aggregate data to look at the perspective of visitors living in different countries. And if there's this kind of implicit, I don't want to call it a bias, but just like a differing response rate to some of our experience questions based on where you're from. So is it a cultural thing? Is it bigger than that? And is there a way we can poke the data to get a deeper understanding of how these experiences differ or how our visitors differ? Which, because we only have one Canadian site, we're kind of limited right now. But Andrea, going to CASC, continuing to use those connections that you've started with, we're hopefully going to be able to give more data and some more context to that. I know that's going to be really important for art museums, children's museums, people who are exclusively children's focused or like whole group focused. And Horacio is mentioning same thing for Harris at the Fleet Science Center in San Diego. Internally for now, we're getting started this year. So there's a lot to consider there, but I think the recruitment effort is for everybody. But since I was asked to talk about questions and measures, I'm going to start talking about that instead. And yeah, the way Alex phrased it in the list is kind of this refinement of the core instrument. So for many of you, in fact, everybody here, you have now seen the core instrument explained. You've likely added onto that with institutional specific questions. What you may not be aware of is that one thing we're tasked with at the project level is to review that and refine that every year to make sure that the questions are still relevant. The phrasing and the language and the answer options are still the best that they can be, and that we're not overburdening respondents, basically all the elements of good survey design. And so this is on the list because one, it's part of our annual to-do list, but two, because we have been given some really good suggestions by all of you in ways we can strengthen the survey. Some of them have been very site specific, but some of them are actually really general and applicable to everyone. And so the questions and measures subcommittee is going to think very carefully about how we continue to improve the core instrument for the benefit of everyone. And we've got some very specific things on our mind. So I say that as I don't know if we're talking about resolutions or goals, but I say that with all of you with the goal of 2020 in mind, because any recommendations you have about strengthening the survey, don't just go to our inboxes and then, get buried. It might feel that way, but we do this annual review. Sometimes it happens more often because we're looking for ways to make this even better. That's one of the really nice things about the ongoing efforts that COVES undertakes. We're going to start with the motivation question and we're going to build from there. And so if you have thoughts, definitely send them our way because we'll add them to the questions and measures task list. So we can keep talking. Should I open it up to questions and measures discussion? Does anyone have thoughts on the core instrument or improvements for 2020?
I guess I was just going to say we've just, thanks for your help making some changes to our instrument. We are trying to get the time down a little bit. I don't know what, I can't remember the statistics. Jessica has given me the statistics in terms of the average time it takes people to take the survey. But ours was getting up close to, I think, 4 minutes and 42 seconds, which we thought was too long. And so I don't know if other people we're more comfortable, more closer to the 4 minute mark, or at least being able to round down to 4 minutes when people ask how long it takes. So that's just, I just thought I'd share that that's a motivation for us.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I see Megan on the call. Megan, I'm going to just highlight SMM's efforts because they have been doing ongoing visitor experience studies for so long. They've also toyed with this idea of adding very institutional specific questions, pushing the limits of the core survey, but most recently actually reducing the number of questions to drive their average time down as well. I think that should be a goal. For point of reference, I want to say that the average survey duration across all sites in the last fiscal year was around 4.5 minutes. So, if you're getting close to 5, that's probably too long. I think the core instrument with no institutional flexible questions is a hair under 4 minutes. So that 4 to 5 minute is kind of your sweet spot. If you are over 5 minutes, this is for the general group, you should work on cutting it down or working with Alex and I to think about ways we can effectively reduce the burden for your respondents. And to Carla's question, there's no real timeline to review the questions. The questions and measures team hasn't met yet this year, but we will be meeting soon. So keep thinking about it and just send us suggestions whenever. And yes, Beth Katz from the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles just suggested it would be helpful and interesting to see what other institutions' existing custom questions are. That is a great point. We have a list. I'm going to update that list, and then I'm going to share it to the COP, because that's the place where we share things. Yes? Or to another location, and I'm going to alert everyone when I do it. Great. Okay, so now we're on to the next item, which is community and communication strengthening. So this webinar is a testament to the COVES community. If you're new to the system, joining in January or October, this may feel like this is something we've always done. We actually just started it at the tail end of last year. So I think July or August was our first COVES webinar or web chat. The number of people we see every month is really heartening. I think this has been a very successful effort for us to strengthen the community, but we're always looking for ways to continue to improve this, whether it's the topic of the next web chat or getting together at local or regional national conferences or other ideas you may have. We're really working to strengthen this group and think about who's invited to these calls so that they feel more a part of the COVES community. So we are going to continue to focus on this in the year of 2020 and make sure that our COVES community is stronger than ever. And that starts with communication. So aspects of strengthening conversations and thinking about ways we build community from the COVES participants is really integral to our efforts. Sarah, Alex, Gabby, do you want to add anything to that? Or did I say it perfectly the first time as usual?
I think you hit the major points.
Opening it up to conversation, are there ideas that people have about ways we can strengthen our community or improve our conversations across the network?
Or things you see other projects do that you really value, other collaborative projects like this.
T-shirts. Everyone wants a t-shirt.
That's why it says visitors can.
What is useful to you all being on here? There are some 20-something boxes. What is bringing you to these things? Is it just like having something on the calendar that we are coming together every month or so, or what's useful to you all?
Honestly, having the opportunity to actually hear and see how other people are handling, we have really common concerns. So like, it was a couple sessions ago, we had something about like communicating your data in your institution and actually being able to see like real examples. Jessica from Science World shared the blog post she did, and we've now started doing something similar here. So it's really seeing those kind of real world, this is what I'm actually doing in my institution, that is what makes this so good, in my opinion.
Jessica also just did, so I'm a big fan of Jessica. I'm just trying to be a very, very poor substitute for Jessica today, participating on the call because we're hosting a museum educator conference here today, and she's participating in that. But we just had another great example of Jessica's internal communication with the data. Is that we had some skepticism. There's a strong, I'm sure none of you will identify with this. We had some strong perception at Science World that we only get families with little kids here. And I, of course, knew in my heart of hearts, had a high level of confidence that we have a lot of adult-only groups that come, or primarily couples. And the COVES data supported that, but people were skeptical about whether the COVES data was accurate. And so Jessica just did a deep dive into our actual ticketing system data, used a sampling protocol to look at the ticketing system in weeks that we had really good, particularly good COVES data, and did a comparison, and lo and behold, it validated it like to the percentage point. Yeah. And she shared that with our research and evaluation team a couple of weeks ago, and she'll be sharing that with our my senior leadership peers later in the week. So I think that's a really good example of internal data. It's really, it's 28% of our audience. Like, we need to pay attention to that audience, and so yeah, just another example. And I love her blog post. She does a monthly blog post, in case anybody missed it. What she does is she writes a really awesome blog post in our internal newsletter every month. And it's good. She's a great writer, so they're fun.
We're dealing with the exact same skepticism here at the Museum of Science. And I'll be really interested to hear how, senior leadership and other folks react to seeing that you were able to validate that. That's fascinating.
Okay, some ideas from the chat, just in case people aren't able to access the chat. I don't know what the boxes without faces. I guess no one's on the phone, right? Everyone's on a computer, so everyone can see the chat.
At least
so
one phone.
Stop reading the chat.
There's at least one phone on here.
Okay.
I think.
The couple of comments from the chat have to do with the benefits of the webinar. Being hearing the collective and building our network is always useful, and getting to know others. And I think that drove Beth to say it would be helpful to have a roster of all the COVES reps. So that is something we can put together, at the very least, institutions and a contact or two with an email address. I don't want you to take that to like spam everyone, although, do what you will with it. But it sounds like that's a good idea, and other people would like that. Is that okay if we start doing that, sharing some contact information for a contact point or two? Julie's just given the cold. Yeah.
Yes. I wish there was voting on here, the little thumbs up deal.
There's not?
No, that's Adobe, whatever it's called.
Okay.
Connect.
Okay, so community strengthening is really important. It sounds like this is a good start, and we've got some other ways where we can allow you to connect with one another. So that's a great suggestion and a good goal for 2020. All right, so the next one that the core COVES team has identified is capacity building and data conversations. Andrea just kind of referenced this, and I think Megan did too, in terms of how the webinars are useful and hearing others' examples, but we've got some goals. And, we want to continue to strengthen the resources that are available to you and our ability to share data across the network. Sarah, or Gabby, any expansion on that?
So I have lots of partial thoughts around all of this. I think my former title was like evaluation capacity building superhero or champion. I don't remember what Michelle called me. But I've been thinking a lot about sort of how to follow up with everybody. I do some of the checking in with some of you about how data collection is going. Are we hitting targets? Do we need support? I'm here to support you and have coffee or happy hour, whatever you need. But then also thinking about this, what we were talking about earlier of how do we roll out conversations? How do we feel confident about other colleagues at our institutions being critical consumers of data, data savvy, what have you, and sort of ready to either have robust conversations together or to be given access to your dashboards, whatever level you're looking at. And so I've been thinking about how do I draw from the wisdom of all of you and start creating things, building sort of COVES branded stuff to be able to help institutions that might not have that capacity yet. And so the pieces that I've been thinking the most about are those initial rollouts. How do you get people to not be overwhelmed by the data when you first start looking at it, to start asking questions of it and digging in together. And so if there are other pieces of conversations or trainings that you all are interested in seeing us create, I'd love to add them to my list. And anybody who has anything that you think has been helpful, I would love to reach out to you to see if you can share it with me.
Cool. And I think the last item on our big goals for this year would be number 5 around translation. And Andrea kind of had put a note, Andrea from Science World in Vancouver, obviously, put a note earlier about French translation being critical for reaching out to Canadian science centers. And I think there was, I think it was maybe Horacio from the fleet. Oh yeah, mentioning that you're so close to Mexico, and that participation from science centers in Mexico would be really great. And so international participation also. A lot of things are factoring into where we want to get to with translating the COVES survey. So most of you know that right now the core instrument is, I say, almost completely translated, because during a review I've noticed that there are some slight inconsistencies around some of our questions, namely those core questions where it's a core question, but there's still some flexibility, like what did you see or do at the museum today? Everybody's options are different, and they're always changing, so we need to make sure that those are always up to date. So the COVES core instrument will be completely translated into Spanish, right? So we've got one language other than English. But aside from that, there's a couple of other issues that we want to work out, and we have finally convened this really great subcommittee on language and translation with folks from a lot of your different institutions kind of providing perspective, which has been very helpful. So one of the big goals that we'd like to get to would be to have a standardized protocol that would provide guidance and assistance to any data collector, regardless of the languages they do or don't speak, to be able to kind of administer the survey to someone where you don't have a language in common, but assuming that the survey is translated into that language. So that I've been working with our language and translation subcommittee. A lot of them have practice with bilingual data collection and, facilitating getting through a survey when, you don't share language with the person who you're collecting data from, but they're still interested in taking the survey. So we want to become more representative of our audiences. We know that right now, for non-English speaking and non-Spanish speaking audiences, even for Spanish speaking audiences, we could do a much better job of representing their data better, but that we're kind of missing that portion of our visitors. And for some of us, that could be a pretty significant chunk, whether it's just local immigrant or just non-English speaking communities, not necessarily immigrants, or big tourist populations in some of our cities. So we want to be able to, better capture that whole range of who is in our public visitation. But in addition to that kind of protocol that we would then start sharing at every training that we do, the half-day training that we do with every site, as well as like bringing to existing sites, maybe on could be a webinar topic like this, just kind of going through that protocol. We also want to identify which new languages beyond Spanish will be kind of the most fruitful places to start for the COVES collaboration based on the group we have. So sometime in the next few months, you can probably look forward to seeing some sort of a survey or data collection method somehow that will ask people at your site to say, use a few different methods to identify which languages would be top priorities for you. I have a couple of guesses as to what they might be for the COVES collaboration broadly, like Chinese and French. But it may be that there's a lot of commonalities in what other languages would come up. And then we'll figure out, the best way to get those translations into the COVES survey. For Spanish, we were lucky enough to have a number of staff at our institutions who had who are bilingual and speak Spanish and English fluently and could translate the survey and then back translate it. And we've got, quite a bit of that capacity. So it might be looking at what capacity exists here at the Museum of Science for that. or for some things like contracting out to a translation service and getting those, making sure that it's good and getting those translations in, so that we can have them ready. And so we've got a lot of ideas about what that would look like. I'm seeing people start to throw languages into the chat box already, which is awesome. But that process has actively kicked off, and I'm really hoping that we'll have, a number of new kind of deliverables on that ready for you all. If anyone else has any thoughts about the translation side of things or that process, feel free to share them now. If there's nothing that comes top of mind, I think we could maybe transition over to having you all share, any COVES goals or resolutions that you're working on. And earlier there were a few people who actually requested that we do just a really quick round of intros. I know with so many people on the call, it can be a little overwhelming. But if you guys wouldn't mind, I can just kind of quick go down the side of my screen. I'll say your name, and if you could unmute if possible and just say your name and what institution you're at, we can do that pretty quickly. So beyond us on the COVES core team. Sorry, Sarah, you're unmuting.
And do you want them to share any goals that they have for COVES
sure,
or themselves as human beings?
Yeah,
whatever level of sharing.
As human being. And if you don't have anything in particular, don't feel pressure to say what it is or anything like that. It's not like, calling anybody out like I'm the scary professor who's making you answer a question in college or something. If nothing's top of mind, just feel free to say I'm just listening. But if you do have something, feel free to share it with all of us. We'd love to hear. So the first person on my list is Kaylin.
Hi, I'm Kaylin. I work at the Mayborn Museum in Waco, Texas. I guess professionally, the biggest goal I have right now is we are trying to create a better guest profile of who actually is coming into the museum, which COVES is definitely helping us learn more. So that's all I got.
Awesome. Shannon.
Hello. Sorry, I have a cough drop if I sound weird. So I'm Shannon Atwood from Discover World in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I think one of our main goals for our little COVES team here is to share the information. We're 1 year in as of January 1st, so we're actually going to start putting it to use this year.
614 number I have on here. I think that's Columbus.
I don't know who else is from COSI is here, but I'm Chris Hurtubise from COSI. And oh, that's me. Yep. And there's several of the team who work on COVES, Rita Diedrich, Jesse Tanakis, and others. They're all in a different training, I think, this afternoon. So I'm the person who said that I have a new role that's in data discovery. So I'm really excited about COVES. And I posed in the chat, I'm really interested in understanding through COVES more about who is coming, but also I'd love to talk to the group at some point about what we know about who's not coming and why, to kind of look at from both sides. So delighted to be on the call today.
Excellent. I think that would be a great topic for an upcoming chat also. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts about that. The next person on the list is Alexis.
Hi, I'm Alexis Clark from the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. I'm the Assistant Director of Research and Evaluation here. And I'm super jazzed about recruitment. That's something that I know is super important to you guys, and we really want more like local Philly area museums, hopefully, to join the collaborative so we can compare to them. And we're also gearing up to hopefully do some trainings with our staff so that they are just as excited about the data that we're collecting as we are.
Alan Lamb.
I am Alan Lamb. I'm the IT manager at the Fleet Science Center, and we just started using COVES. We actually haven't even started doing surveys yet, so I'm just here to learn.
Amber?
Yes. Is that working now?
Yes, yes, we hear you.
So hi, I'm Amber Kestner. I am at the Bell Museum in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we are obviously most interested in just learning more about our audience. We're in the second year of a brand new building. And so there's been a lot of changes from the first year to the second year. We've gotten a little bit of a slow start because we rely on University of Minnesota students as our primary survey takers. So our resolution is really to focus on training them and getting them comfortable and getting them out on the floor so that the data can actually be collected.
Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea Durham from Science World in British Columbia, in Vancouver. I'm Vice President of Exhibits, Digital Research and Evaluation in Theaters. Our goal for this year is, I'm following Amber is perfect because we're also trying to consistently get more survey takers. We're using a combination of kind of staff volunteers who are trained, who we all tend to be extremely unreliable. Not in terms of the quality of data collection, just the time we're able to devote to it. And a wonderful set of volunteers from outside the organization, but continuing to recruit and make that a consistent, we're always struggling with kind of staff versus volunteer survey collectors. And so that's something that I know Jessica's working hard on to figure out this year. And we've finished our second year of data collection. So now we feel like we have a really robust data set to really make further inroads in internal communication around the data.
Excellent. Next I have Beth.
Hi there, this is Beth. I'm at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County, which includes the La Brea Tar Pits and Museum, if anyone's been to LA. I think still struggling on how to get this information in front of everybody in my institution. But moving forward, we're really interested in that impact aspect of evaluation and understanding the impact we're having on our visitors and community. So thinking about how the COVES tool, along with other evaluation we do, might provide some insight into that. So thinking maybe about our own custom questions moving forward.
I'll go to Caitlin.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. I work at Crystal Bridges with Lee. I'm so excited to be starting with COVES and museums on this project. So really excited to get started.
Great, Elisa.
Unmute. Okay, hi. It's the game with this. We never know whose name you're going to call out. I'm Elisa Israel. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation at the St. Louis Science Center. Been with COVES since early on. My perennial challenge to myself is trying to figure out how to more regularly report on our data to our team here. And so always working on that. And it's wonderful. It's a great problem that we always have data coming in from COVES. So always working on that and longer range thinking. The recruitment and starting to add different types of museums, I think is very exciting for us, because I'm hoping that eventually we'll get to the point where other St. Louis museums will all be involved, because we do some collaborative stuff already on other fronts, and it's exciting to think about getting COVES in those other settings as well.
So I have Carla, but I know Carla said she wanted to not unmute because of a loud children's cartoon and a poor sick kid.
Hi, Alex.
Oh, there you are. Okay, good. Okay.
I can do it. I'm sorry if you have some Ninjago, how do you say, cartoons in the background. I'm at home taking care of my sick child. So my name is Carla, and I work in OMSI, the Oregon Museums of Science in Portland, Oregon. And our big resolution for today is, we have kind of two, I think, for COVES. we have, like, how do you say, we have been lagging behind the monthly targets, and it's because we have data collector fatigue. So we're gonna engage some educators this year to another staff across the museum to start helping us to collect data so we can meet the targets. The other goal is like, we have a grant through the IMLS that is called Museums Empower. So then that team wants to like look and probably help us refine some institutional questions around equity and inclusion. So that's what we have for goals. Like look with it, and then also look at the COVES core questions. You have like, if I feel welcome, or if like, so these questions that you show in the dashboard, for example, from 0 to 10, I think, we want to know who are the ones who say that they feel welcome, and we want to know who are those who rate from 0 or 1 to 5, for example. So that's, yeah, those are some of our goals.
Excellent. Horacio.
Hi, everyone. We're here at the Fleet Science Center in San Diego. I'm here with Robin, and we're looking forward to getting started here next week. I think I'll echo what a lot of folks have said. Very interested in learning about our visitors, you know who they are, why they come here, but also interested for, as you mentioned, to learn who's not coming. I think eventually we'll like to get to the point. But we're looking forward to just get started, learning how to get this done well and effectively, make sure our staff members are ready to get this launch and start sharing data with everybody.
Awesome. Jim.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Taylor. I'm the Member Relations Manager at the Discovery Center Museum. We've been using COVES for a few years now, and our main goals are we'd like to see what type of impact we're having on our immediate community. We're interested in comparing ourselves to museums that are around our size or in similar cities as we are. And then also as a member relations manager, I pay close attention to the member side of the surveys to make sure that our members are satisfied as well.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Julie.
Okay, hi. I'm Julie Goss from Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas. And I'm so excited to be connected to so many people who have the same challenges that I do. Yay! We are, getting COVES up and running here this month and transitioning from our existing system. So I have many of the same challenges that you all have mentioned, as well as launching our COVES system here, and that changes a little bit of our data collection. So we're figuring out our new placement and how long it takes people, and then excited to get that data to see how it will compare over time. We've been working a lot on looking at our museum visitor demographics over time, how that's shifted and how we're reflecting our community. So that's the type of analysis that I've been up to.
Awesome. Chris Mooney.
So a few of us in San Diego, so you've heard some of these things before. We're new. I particularly am looking forward to learning from all of you about how you're using the data to inform decisions. And then, of course, we're just excited to begin getting our data.
Laura.
Hi.
Oh.
I'm Laura Green from the Pensacola Mess Hall. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here. I'm sitting in today for Megan Pratt, who's called away to a meeting. We are both new and old to COVES. So we've been involved before and we're getting re-involved. So we're really excited about starting back up this month. And one of the things I know we were wanting to look at based on some of the data is we have both a Flex Pass, which is kind of a 6-month membership versus a year-long membership to the museum, and we want to see how those two sort of push attendance in either direction, or at least affect attendance. That's one of the things we're hoping to look at this year, and of course compare to other cohorts across the country.
Excellent. The next person on my list is Laura Dixon, but Laura does not have a working microphone, so I will share with you from the chat, saying that Laura Dixon is a new intern at Aztec looking to work in science institutions after graduation. So Laura's just sitting in, listening to us. Gabby kind of pulled Laura on the call today, so hope that this conversation has been useful for you, Laura, so far. Let me see who's next. Leanne Masidi.
Hello, I'm Leanne Masidi. I'm also at the Museum of Science. My role for being on the COVES project is I coordinate the data collection efforts at the Museum of Science. I would say we are obviously thinking a lot about the national perspective, but our institution is also trying to think about how to integrate this work more internally. We have some different leadership that's happening. We've had a lot of transitions, and we're thinking about how we can learn more about some of our traveling exhibitions in this way, and how we can just integrate COVES and kind of across the board.
Megan Goki.
Hello, my name is Megan Goki. I'm at the Science Museum of Minnesota. Immediately, my goal is about kind of along with the questions and measures, improving our institution-specific questions and making them shorter or removing them if necessary. And then in a longer goal, because we've been in COVES for the last couple of years, doing some analyses with the multi-year data set instead of quarter by quarter.
And Megan again, but Megan in Reno. Megan, I think you're, oh, Megan's not at her desk right now. So we'll just go to Rachel Wolf.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel from the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and we are also brand new to COVES as part of the COVES art cohort with Crystal Bridges and Julie. We're super excited to be here. We have been doing visitor surveying and running that program internally for about a year. But we will get COVES up and running in the next month or so. Ryan will be out here next week to train and talk with us, which we can't wait for. And I would say that, so I'm not quite sure about goals yet, but because we are new to this, if anyone has ideas about, oh, when we first started, I wished that we had thought about this or taken this into account, or here's something that we learned in our first month or first quarter of surveying or whatever that is. I'd be super excited to hear that and curious to just get advice from all of you as we join in. Thanks.
And then Megan's back. So Megan, it was just a quick introduction. So your name and what institution you're at. And then if you have COVES goals for 2020 or like, a resolution for the coming year for COVES work, you could share that. Or if you don't have a particular one, you can just say that you don't, but that's okay. Sorry, I think you might still be muted if you're trying to talk, Megan. Oh, okay, Megan is sharing in the chat. She's from the Discovery Museum, the Terry Lee Wells Discovery Museum in Reno, Nevada. No microphone, and just got accepted to the CCLI, which is the, help me remember, Cultural Competence Learning Institute.
With Aztec.
Yeah, with Aztec. So focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oh, and we put in a COVE session for Aztec yesterday that's focused on some of those, on the DEAI, diversity, equity, access, inclusion efforts. And I know there's a number of folks who were involved. Some of you kind of touched on that, like, looking at our demographics in our local communities. And so we're hoping to, if Aztec accepts our session, we'll do some presentations about that. And we're also considering maybe looking at some of those data for our aggregate report this year. It's definitely not settled, but we're kind of exploring that possibility. So a greater focus on DEAI issues is something we're also thinking about for COVES for 2020 and beyond. Oh, and then I think I just have one more person on the list here, and that's Sarah Davis.
It's cool. I'm okay doing last. I guess for COVES, my goals are to increase the samples because I know as a larger institution, we're not high up in our sample rate. So I've been actually, since last year, increasing by 10% of what is asked. And I also know we have some other gaps. So I'm trying to solve those. And then I always, because this is like the last thing that they do, I also want to think of their experience leaving. And we've talked about the length of time, and probably for us, this is a decent, close to 5 minutes is fine. But I know some of the institutions here have played around with thank you gifts. And so that's something that I think we have to consider because it is like the last thing for their own experience. The other thing, the other meta thing that I always would love to do, which, maybe 2021, is more of like the survey of the survey and the experience of our surveys and the quality of their experience, of what they think they're contributing to, and those kinds of things. That could be something that we look at for COVES because that's a very large data set that we could pull from. But then that would be also another type of collaborative effort for more method related research.
Well, awesome. Thank you everyone for sharing all of those really amazing goals and resolutions for the new year. It sounds like we're all working on really awesome stuff. And I heard a lot of overlap. So if you heard somebody saying, oh, I'm trying to work on this or solve this problem or look at this issue, and you want to connect. If you don't have the resources to connect with that person, let us know, and we'll try to share, like we said we would do, share like contacts around more directly after this webinar, and just make sure that everybody has easy ways to contact each other. We just have like a couple minutes left, so if anyone has anything you want to add right now or in the chat, I'll just allow a moment for that. Any questions for us or for the group that you want to get answered before we leave?
I'll just jump in because I'm never afraid to talk on these things. That echoing back to Sarah's earliest comment from the webinar about, this idea of goal setting in 2020, if it's cheesy or if people will come to it and talk about things. I have taken over a page of notes on all of the great ideas. And so the reinforcement that these types of conversations may seem fleeting, if you will, but it's really instructive for us at the higher levels of COVES to really be able to drive some of the work that we do towards these different areas, whether it's thinking about guest profiles, who's not coming, equity, inclusion efforts, all these things that we the words are in our heads and we talk about it for the project, but hearing you all say it and frame it in a way that's actionable is very, very helpful because it pushes that work to the forefront of everything that COVES is doing. So I just want to say thank you to everyone, and you should never hesitate from sharing more of these ideas because it is really, really good for us to hear.
I had a communication related question. So we have the community practice hosted on Aztec or through Aztec. We talked a bit at the Leadership Advisory Council about different ways of connecting and building community. And I'm wondering about thoughts about a listserv rather than finding that website, or if there are like benefits of both types of conversation streams. So if you have thoughts about like creating a listserv of, and perhaps like instead of the previous request for a list of contact people at each organization, like if we set something up for more email-based conversation, would that be useful? Or is the COP site good enough? I like reading the chat. Thank you much. Okay.
I'm wondering if our art museum colleagues can even make accounts on Aztec or use that feature at all. I'm not actually not sure. Yeah, okay.
We have control to directly invite people through
Okay.
through our COP rather than some of the other ones.
Okay, so it seems like there's some
Nice. Okay.
varying
Cool.
opinions about listservs. So it sounds like maybe a good idea, Sarah. Awesome. Well, it looks like folks are kind of jumping off because we're just about at the hour. But thank you all for being here. It was really great to see you all and chat with you all and hear about the great work that you're looking forward to doing in 2020. Another thing I'm thinking of right now is that if you have ideas for what you would like to talk about with the group on these little monthly webinars, we have like kind of a running list going, but if you have thoughts, send them our way always. We will sometimes try to alternate between like doing a big conversation like this and then doing something where we like present COVES data and talk about it that way. We may in the future also do broader COVES webinars, so like reaching out to like the Aztec and ACM and broader memberships for people if we feel like we have that kind of data to share. So that could happen in the future as well. But for now, I really enjoy just connecting with all of you kind of on a more personal basis. So thanks for joining and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Happy New Year.